It began with a hiss of magnetic tape. In the early 1990s, a quiet Brazilian town whispered about cassettes that shouldn't exist, recordings of voices chanting, coordinates whispered, names fading beneath static. Police denied the evidence. Newspapers blamed hysteria. Yet the tapes spread anyway, copied, traded, distorted. A virus made of sound. Some heard proof of witchcraft. Others heard fear itself echoing through cheap speakers. Decades later, those reels return, digitized, remixed, impossible to authenticate. But one thing is certain: belief leaves a signal. Even when the truth is erased, file number 034, the leaked Satanic tapes. A story about hysteria, power, and the noise between faith and fear. In the summer of 1993, the city of Altamira in northern Brazil felt smaller than usual. People began vanishing from the edges of town. A taxi driver, a street vendor, 2 school children. At first, police blamed poverty and migration. But every week, another family pinned a photograph to the precinct wall. Local radio hosts filled the silence with speculation. Some callers spoke of traffickers, others of a secret cult that met near the riverbanks. The word sacrifice slipped into conversation long before evidence ever did. Then came the cassettes. A street sweeper claimed to have found one inside an abandoned car, a tape marked only with the number 13. When played, it carried a low hum, distant voices, and the sound of water dripping in rhythm. Within days, more tapes surfaced, all slightly different, all impossible to trace. The panic spread faster than the police could deny it. Newspapers ran headlines about black masses and witches in the Amazon. Evangelical preachers warned of demons hiding in plain sight. The hysteria became national. The so-called satanic tapes divided the country. Skeptics demanded proof. Believers demanded vengeance. Investigators eventually confirmed that the disappearances were real, but the voices on the recordings were never matched to anyone. Some claimed they were hoaxes meant to distract from political corruption. Others swore they heard names whispered that only locals would know. Forensic labs filed reports. None were conclusive. But once the word satanic appeared in print, facts no longer mattered. By late 1993, the story had left Altamira and crossed Brazil by word of mouth. Radio and fear in São Paulo and Rio, talk shows debated whether the satanic tapes were real. Callers swore they'd heard identical voices in their own towns. Others insisted the recordings carried a curse. Once you listened, you couldn't forget the sound. Police divisions from 3 states opened parallel investigations. None agreed on what they were chasing. Some officers tested the tapes for hidden messages. Others refused to play them at all. Bootleg copies flooded street markets. Vendors sold them beside gospel cassettes and pop singles, mystery packaged like entertainment. The more the authorities denied the story, the stronger it became. Churches filled overnight. Parents kept children indoors. Psychics offered to decode the frequencies of evil. Journalists began linking unrelated disappearances under the same headline. Suddenly, every missing person became another victim of the cult. Forensic experts from Brasilia attempted to trace the original signal. All they found were layers of degradation, each copy producing new sounds. New voices, as if panic itself had entered the recording. In December 1993, the Ministry of Justice issued a statement calling the phenomenon a moral contagion. But by then, the story had already escaped control. It lived inside televisions, sermons, and late-night conversations. It had become a national ghost, one that didn't haunt a place, but an idea. When hysteria becomes national, reason turns local. By early 1994, Brasilia had assigned a small task force to trace the origin of the Satanic tapes. Analysts from 3 laboratories reviewed hundreds of recordings. None could identify a master copy. The frequencies didn't match known recording devices. Some ran slightly below normal pitch. Others contained overlapping voices, as if 2 worlds had been recorded at once. Investigators found no chants, no hidden messages, only layers of interference, radio bleed, and human imagination. A young technician at the Federal Police Lab made an unsettling note in his report. Every time I play it, new sounds appear. In Altamira, journalists began interviewing the families of the missing. Most had never heard the tapes. They only heard about them. Yet every parent described the same noise at night, a low hum beneath the crickets. Psychologists called it collective trauma. Sociologists called it mass suggestion. Pastors called it proof. And between the arguments, the tapes kept spreading. Bootlegs appeared in neighboring countries, labeled O Som de Diabo, the sound of the devil, when a local newspaper traced one cassette to a former radio technician. The man disappeared before he could be questioned. His house, found days later, contained nothing but broken radios and a single note. The signal was already here. By mid-1994, Brazil was no longer asking if the Satanic tapes were real, only who was hiding the truth. Competing TV networks launched nightly specials promising exclusive access to recordings that no one could verify. Studio lights turned grainy evidence into spectacle. Politicians spoke about spiritual cleansing. Churches organized mass vigils, broadcast live to millions the phrase "war against darkness," flooded billboards. Preachers claimed they could identify the cursed frequencies, and crowds brought radios to be blessed. Meanwhile, the scientists who debunked the myth were called heretics. Their statements were edited, their faces blurred, their credibility erased by fear. Newspapers sold faster when they printed demons on the cover. Panic had become an economy. The more coverage the story received, the harder it was to find its origin. The tapes were no longer a mystery. They were a mirror reflecting whoever listened. In one broadcast, a journalist played a tape live on air. Nothing happened. But in the days that followed, hundreds of viewers called claiming they had nightmares of the same forest, the same voice repeating a single word, "Volt, come back." By 1995, the sound had gone quiet. No new tapes appeared, no new names were whispered. The panic that once filled every headline dissolved into rain and static. Police warehouses overflowed with sealed evidence boxes. Most were mislabeled, some completely empty. The nation had built a monument to noise. Journalists moved on to politics, churches to new prophecies. Only a few technicians still listened, convinced that buried inside the hiss was a pattern humanity hadn't learned to read. They charted every frequency, every pause. The graphs looked almost organic, like the growth rings of a tree. When the last analysis report reached Brasilia, its conclusion was one line: source inconclusive. Phenomenon social. The files were archived, the reels boxed, and the public forgot. Yet in Altamira, during the next blackout, Neighbors swore they heard the hum again, just under the sound of rain, faint but alive. Some said it was electricity. Others said the tapes were never recordings at all, but amplifiers playing back the country's own fear. Decades later, no one agrees on what the satanic tapes really were. For some, they remain a warning, proof that fear travels faster than truth. For others, they're a national secret, locked in archives that no one admits exist. In 2025, fragments resurface online, half-erased audio, warped photos of the original cassettes, stories told by people who claim they once heard the hum. Historians call it folklore, but folklore built on evidence becomes something stranger, memory with paperwork. The towns that once panicked now sell souvenirs. A mural in Altamira shows a cassette floating above the river, painted in saintly gold. The generation born after the panic listens out of curiosity, not belief. Yet even in digitized form, the sound still carries that uneasy rhythm, like a heartbeat under the static. Maybe the tapes were never about the devil at all. Maybe they were about us, our need to record fear so we can pretend to control it. The world has moved on, but the hum remains softer, buried under new noise, viral headlines, trending terrors, the endless echo of attention. File number 34 closed, but the signal continues. If you thought the horror ended here, you're wrong. What other dark rituals and forbidden practices are still being performed in secret? Dive deeper into the chilling world of haunted ceremonies, banned footage, and eerie folklore that refuses to stay buried. Click on the playlist to uncover terrifying recordings, lost evidence, and disturbing stories they never wanted you to see. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for weekly uploads of spine-tingling footage and dark tales that echo from the shadows. This is the Forbiddance Archive, where the hidden truth and haunting evidence come to life.